Good morning, everybody. This is Kira with CraftyLink and Polymer Clay TV, and we are going to do a little demo featuring Christy Friesen's book Flourish. Here's the artist's name. It's book 1, Flora, Leaf, Flower, and Plant Designs, and we're doing a create-along using this book for our topics. So I have some things here that I'm going to show you that have to do with topic number 2, which is carvings. So in the book on page 22, I'll just show you briefly. If you haven't ever read one of Christy's books, you'll see right now that they are chock full of information. So we're going to be doing carvings, carved leaves, carved flowers. She has inspiration sections in the book, and it's chock full of stuff, and it's in a really funny, cute style because that's Christy. That's the way she writes. She puts little pictures of herself in the books and all kinds of wonderful information, very photo heavy, and all kinds of good stuff. So we're going to work on the challenge topic number 2, which is going to be carved leaves and flowers. And these are my interpretations of this technique. So this is a little carved flower, and you can see that it's both carved, it's white on the back, and it has some little sort of metallic effect on the front. I'm going to show you how to get that. And it's deeply carved on the edges here. And then this leaf is a pretty leaf shape. It's very substantial. This could be put onto an art quilt or sewed onto the front of a journal or something. So the technique that I'm going to show you differs a little bit from Christy's technique because, of course, I'm not going to just copy her, because we don't do that. And it gets so boring when you just copy someone else's stuff. So you've got to always put your own twist on it. And my twist tends to be spirals and sort of extremely soft organic shapes. So that's my leaf. And then I've got some ready to go with the technique right here that just came out. Clay is really hard and pretty stiff, not terribly flexible, although watch this. It does flex a bit, okay, which is what gives this clay its resilience. So you could make jewelry or some kind of art piece that you were going to touch and hold out of this clay. And the clay that we're using starts out white, and it is called Sculpey Ultralight. And the ultralight clay does not act like a regular polymer clay. It's actually really squishy, and for lack of a better term, it's kind of like marshmallowy. It's very different. It's not like your typical polymer clay. It's got a lot of air in it. And when you want to make a shape, like for instance this flower shape, you would need to, especially if you're going to join two pieces, you've really got to sort of work in slow motion, because you can't just slap the pieces together and roll them, for example. I'm going to roll this and show you what it does. Okay, it's basically not even sticking together. You've got to actually like firmly push the seams together and slowly but surely meld the pieces together, because they just won't bond any other way. The clay kind of resists itself, which is interesting, and maybe you could utilize that property for some other kind of project, but not for this one, because obviously I want to start with like a nice ball of clay that doesn't have any cracks in it. And one of the best ways I find of working with ultralight clay when bonding two pieces together is to kind of do this. I'm pressing in with my thumbs, and I'm pressing in with these thumbs And I'm just sort of going around in a circle until I've got a good bond with no cracks showing on the surface. And because I'm going to make a circular flower, it's okay if I end up with a sort of flat, pancakey piece of clay. So you just work on it from both directions until you have the thickness and size that you want. And then I'm going to show you how I started and got these shapes. Okay, so here's my uncured clay. This piece is cured, this piece is finished, and I've got one of Christy's tools. This one is called the Wow It's Awesome tool, and it has two different ends on it. I'm going to use this end that's got sort of a chisel pointy thing, and I'm just going to roll it along the edges, just like that. And really what I'm doing is I'm defining this star-shaped flower that I want to make. So that's all there really is to that part of the project, is just to make the definition of the shape you want and then put it on a tile and bake it. As for doing something like the leaf, and the cool thing about this clay is that it will somewhat, not totally, but somewhat hold its shape in the oven. You've got to gently coax your clay once again into the shape that you want. And you can make it fairly thin, but I would use my thumbs and pull on it, stretch it, flatten it, and then sort of pull out and pinch the section that you would want to use for a stem. You never really want to attach a piece on to this kind of clay because it's just going to fall right off. So if you want anything to be sticking out or protruding, you've got to do what I just did, which is sort of pull on it to get it to come out and then form it. So I basically just kind of twisted my end. And then depending on how thick or thin you made this, you can actually sort of bend it and it will keep its shape while it's baking. So this is sort of a bent leaf, and then you can put it on your baking sheet and bake it, and it will mostly hold its shape. I say mostly because it is a really soft clay, and sometimes they will fall down a little bit when you put them in the oven and they encounter the heat. If you want a really specific shape, you could put a little fiber fill or something under there. Fiber fill is fine in the oven, as long as it's not connecting to any of the elements so that it would catch on fire. But you can put a little fiber fill on your baking sheet to prop up little edges and things, or to make the leaf sort of blow in the wind. You can prop it while you're baking it. Okay, so then you're going to bake your clay, and I'm just going to put these back in the package and put them off to the side. And then the fun is going to begin here. So I have some tools that I specifically made just for working with carving clay. And they are, I'm going to use my Speedball linoleum cutters, which, if you remember back to your school days, they look like this. They're just little V-shaped and U-shaped cutters. And then I made myself a polymer clay handle. So the cutters fit, and I'm going to use the deep U. The cutters fit right in here. So basically, to make this handle, I poked the end of the tool into the clay. I made a depression for holding it. See, you can see like my fingers go right there. And it fits my hand great because I made it for me. So I'm going to put these off to the side. Now please remember that these cutters are incredibly sharp. And in Christy's book, she says, and she doesn't actually use linoleum cutters, she just goes ahead and uses an X-Acto blade. But that's not the type of carving I'm going to do. But, you know, she does have a word of caution in there about keeping the blade away from your eyes and arteries. So please remember that you don't want to cut yourself. So you've really got to watch it. I always make sure to cut away, hold on to it with your fingers away and cut away from yourself. You never want to cut like this, because I guarantee you'll end up with this lovely sharp V embedded in your finger. And then you'll be going to the emergency room. So don't do that. Okay, so we're just going to carve gently. And these, the clay carves like butter, but not soft butter. It carves like frozen butter, maybe. So you've got to work at it a little bit. It's not super easy, but with a little practice, it's relatively easy. And then these things here are baked in as guidelines so that I know where I want to go. And you see how I'm trying really hard to keep my other appendages out of the way, because the blade does tend to slip just a little bit, especially when you're sort of getting to the end of a cut. Okay, and then I'm going to try to lower my camera. Bear with me. There we go. The cool thing right now is that we're gonna make the circle in the middle of the flower, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually turn the clay. We're gonna dig in, and we're going to spin the clay piece rather than moving the blade. And then when you get close to the end, be careful, because as you're lifting out, sometimes your blade will slip. So here we have, the light is very bright. Okay, the beginning of the center of the flower. Okay, now I'm going to switch blades and go for a deeper, finer cut so that I can refine this center of the flower, cut it deeper, make more of an impression here. And you'll notice that I'm just turning the bead rather than trying to like dig at it with the knife. Okay, and now is the time to come back where those petals connect and decide if you want to sort of dig them in a little bit, refine how the edge goes. These cutters, you don't have to just get them in a little box like that. This is really old school. I've had these for a long time. Now they tend to come with a handle. They come in like a red handle, and the bottom of the handle screws off, and the blades are inside that handle, so it's really convenient sort of carrying contraption. But you can get them at most craft stores. I've seen them at Michael's, A.C. Moore, Hobby Lobby. All right, so there's my center, and now I've got a really fine V-shaped cutter, and I'm going to do some detail work. So I'm going to come out from the center and just make little veiny things here. For the petals. And it's a challenge when you've got something this small to hold onto it in such a way that you're not going to hurt yourself with the cutter. So just, this is one of those things where practice makes perfect. But I really love this particular ultralight clay for how nicely it carves using this method. All right, and then for this one, I had made like a little grid design in the middle. So I'll show you how. Just cutting very lightly, I made stripes sort of going in one direction. And then crisscrossing them in the other direction. Just to give that little center of a flower a little bit of an effect, as opposed to just leaving it plain. Okay, so there's our flower. I'm going to set that aside and work on the leaf a little bit, and then we'll color them. So for the leaf, I'm going to start with my biggest cutter, which is this big U shape. And that is going to be to define this center vein. So I'm just going to sort of meander down the leaf. And define where I want that center vein to go. As you get closer to the end, depending on the shape of your leaf, you might need to pick it up like I am, just to get at it. And as you curve around, it's going to be harder, so just go slow and be careful. All right, so now that I know where I want it to be, I'm going to take my next size cutter and deepen it in the middle. And now that the first line is cut, it's a little easier for me to follow and sort of stay where I wanted the line to be. Okay. Go up to the top, curve it around. And then I'm going to put some sideways veining into it, coming out from the center to the edge. And you can, of course, do whatever style leaves you want. You can follow Christie's technique a little more closely if you get the book, which is really the point, is to get exposed to some of these methods. Or you can follow the technique that I'm using, because I really love my linoleum cutters. I'm just really attached to them. I use them for a lot of different things, so I figured I'd use them for this too. Even though they're not technically exactly what Christy used in her tutorial. Okay, I think on this one I really like how those came out. Let's see. I don't know if I'm gonna vein the other side or not. I can't decide yet. Maybe I'll vein them with the really tiny veiner and do them a little different, maybe closer together. Yeah. Now it's your leaf, so you get to decide how you want it to look. think I'm going to come in. Depending on what shape you do, you could sort of work yourself into a corner. And like we said before, the very most important thing is that as you're cutting, you figure out a way to keep your own body parts out of the path of the blade. Because take it from an art school graduate, you will find ways to cut yourself if you are not really cautious about that. All right, so now you have to decide, do you want to make notches in the edges of the leaf? You know, do you want it to really have a smooth edge, or do you want to notch it out? This leaf has smooth edges. I think I'm going to notch this one a little bit. I'm just doing that by sort of cutting down and out on the edge. And since this cutter is V-shaped, it obliges you very well. It's really easy to make those leaf notches. I'll never forget the day one of my friends showed up with his thumb bandaged, and he told me that he had actually rammed a box cutter into the meaty pad of his thumb because he was cutting something. He was making a sculpture. And very similarly to this, you know, the cutter went off the edge of something and landed right in his hand. So please, please, I can't stress caution more. Okay, so having said that, I'm done cutting, so I'm going to package up my blades because I have lots of other stuff that I want to show you here for the coloring process, and I don't want any cutting tools lying around in my way. Okay. So I'm using my crafting mat, which I got, I believe it's a Ranger product, which is convenient because we're going to be using some Ranger inks. The Adirondack inks work really well for this particular technique. So I also have a basic pom-pom, which is a I got it like at a craft store in a box of a bunch of other pom-poms, and it works really well for this blending and moving ink around. So I'm just going to drop drops of ink right onto the leaf, and then I'm going to use this tool to sort of mush it around. Depending on what you're going to use this for, you might not care if the back is done. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with it, so I'm going to go ahead and do the back. If you need more, you can either put it on the sheet or put it directly on the leaf. But see how nice those pom-poms work as like a ink spreading tool? Works great. And the Sculpey Ultralight is super as far as picking up the ink color. It's just really, really pretty. And now, while it is still a little bit wet, I am going to play around here. This is an etch and pearl. It's like a knitting needle. And I'm going to pour out some ink. I'm not really sure what I feel like doing here. Probably just getting some of this ink into these scratches. They're not even really It really just like scratches on the surface. I don't know. I'll have to see. I know what's going to happen if I do this. If I put a big glob of ink, it spreads. And then you can do something like use a piece of felt to help it spread further. And it's kind of cool because it does do sort of organic things. But it might not be exactly what you want, so you've got to play. See, I didn't really want it to be quite so dark green like that, so I'm going to use this little guy and sort of blend it out a little bit. That's better. That's pretty. And then maybe concentrate that color more on one side than the other. Maybe put a little of this, which is a more orange color, on that side to sort of tone down the hyper dark greeniness of it. And just keep going back and forth with your alcohol colors until you get something that you like. So there's the leaf. And I had done this flower in this light color scheme. I think I'm going to do this new flower in something different. And I have a brush here. This color is Wild Plum and it's very purpley. I'm going to use a brush to put the color where I want it, which is mostly just on the petals, but I want it to be more sort of watercolory and not so intense and blotchy like it tends to come out if you just pour it on directly onto the clay. And I really can't say enough about how the ultralight clay picks up alcohol ink. It's beautiful. This is not, again, not the technique that Christy used in the book. She uses something else to color the clay. So I really encourage you to get the book, get Flourish, so that you can really get the gist of all these projects because they're really cool. All right, so there's Wild Plum, and then I think we will put something else in the, here's red. Let's just go for it. This is Watermelon, and a drop Watermelon right in the middle. Okay, and it sort of bleeds out and around, and you could bleed some of it up onto there like that. And let that dry. And it gives this sort of watercolory look that's really pretty. Maybe encourage it to come out of there up onto these sections. And use your brush to move things around. Maybe even get a little of this and use this little guy to sort of blend pink back onto the top and leave the red in the center. So we've got all kinds of color sort of happening on there. And then you're going to just let this dry, because the last step is a water-based product, and if your items aren't dry, it's going to kind of bleed around and be yucky looking. So I'm going to wash out my brush, which you should always do after you get crafting products all over it, so I'll be right back. One of the fun things about crafting in the morning and then going to work is that everybody knows what you've been doing because alcohol inks take a little while to come out of skin. All right, I'm going to set you aside and I'm going to work on the leaf. So again, these were Adirondack inks by Ranger, and they do come in these sort of earthy tone, somewhat natural. This is watermelon. They all have names that have to do with nature. Like this is citrus. This one's caramel, foods and stuff. I don't know. This one is called Stream, this blue. So this is lettuce. The green is called lettuce. So they come in packs of 3, and they're great with polymer clay. If you don't use them yet, you should pick up the 3-pack and try them out. All right, and then this other product that we're going to show right now is another one that's fabulous with clay. It's called Inkagold Metallic Rub, and it is by a company called Viva Decor, and they're really, really cool. They're a little bit wax-based, but mostly water-based. They have beeswax in them, but that's not really the main event. They're just sort of a waxy feeling, thick paint that you can rub on, and it dries pretty quickly. And you can touch the tops of, like, put it where you want it. Touch the tops of the texture with it. Put it around the edges of things to bring out the natural edge, but also to highlight. Like here, I'm going to highlight the center vein. And I'm just using my finger. But I'm going to run it down the center vein and sort of highlight what's going on there, because it's shiny, but not super shiny. It's got a sheen to it that's really, really nice and pretty. Maybe a little difficult to pick up on the webcam, but I'm trying. I'll take some photos too and post them on the website. But wherever you put it, it stays, it dries almost instantly. And it offers that sort of shiny look. So we've got it on both of these. You can see it a little more there, going down the center leaf. See, it's nice stuff. So this is the green color, which is called green yellow. And then this color is called, what are you? Old gold or something? It's not exactly pearl, and it's not exactly gold. Okay, so it's like an off color. But it's really pretty to highlight a slightly darker design with, because it brings it right out. Just going to highlight the center of the petals and then the center of the flower to bring up that grid carving. And the cool thing about it is that it doesn't cover the color that's there, but when you look, you can see it, and it does show up as a shiny sheen kind of a thing. So, you know, it's here, but it's not overpowering the rest of the piece. So it's real pretty. Now, it's not, as I said, it's water-based. It's not something you would want to use for, say, jewelry without sealing it, because if I were to take this into the sink and run it under water, it would wash right off. So you do have to seal this product under some liquid clay or some kind of sealer if you're going to make something other than artwork, something that's going to be perhaps put into some water at some point. And then you just, when you wash your hands, this stuff does come right off. So it's Inkagold Metallic Rub. There are a couple places online where you can get it. I got these at Michael's and Joann's craft stores, so it is becoming more available in the stores. So give it a try. So that's that. And here are the beads. And now it's your turn to go create something using these techniques, and you can post them in the forums in the photo section on CraftyLink.com. And we're going to be giving away prizes this month. Last month we gave away a copy of the Dragon Book and Christy's Can't Live Without It tool. And this month we're giving away one of these, which is a stellar tool. It's called the Gotta Have It tool. It's a nice, heavy stainless steel tool that has a wedge on one side, sort of a spoon-shaped wedge for pressing designs, and then a flattened sort of scoop, good for pressing lines and making impressions. It's a really nice tool. So this is the Gotta Have It tool. It's part of the December prize pack for the Christy Friesen Create Along, and you can follow us on Facebook and Pinterest to get more details. And I want to thank you for hanging out with me today and learning how to make these. Now it's your turn. Go make your own.